Hey everybody, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. here with some great news. As of today, Nicole and I are officially on the ballot in California, the largest of all the electoral college states. I want to tell you the story of how it happened. A journalist recently asked me whether I considered myself a populist, and she used that term as if it were a dirty word. I answered, yeah, I'm a populist, the same way that my father was a populist. And I explained to her that populism is often motivated by idealistic impulses and motivations to take government back from corrupt elites, but it can also be captured by demagogues for darker purposes, to spur division, hatred, polarization, and bigotry. I gave her the example of my father's 1968 campaign. In 1968, my father launched a populist movement that captured the imagination of all kinds of cross-section of the American public, of white Americans, working class, middle-class Americans, cops, firefighters, union members, black Americans, white Americans, people on the Indian reservation in the Mississippi Delta, farm workers in California, and poor people in Appalachia. 4 years after my father's death, in 1972, during the presidential election, many of those white Americans who had strongly supported my father in 1968 turned their vote that year not to George McGovern, who was aligned with my father on almost every issue, but they supported instead George Wallace, a bigoted segregation supporter who was antithetical to everything my father believed in. And I told her that it struck me then, and it's occurred to me many times since, that every nation, like every individual, has a darker side and a lighter side, and that the easiest thing for a politician to do is to appeal to our bigotry and our hatred and anger and xenophobia and our fear and all of these darker, low vibration impulses. The more difficult thing is what my dad tried to do and what I'm trying to do during this election, which is to get people to step away from their narrow self-interest, to transcend the lower impulses of bigotry and anger and fear, and see themselves as part of a great adventure, and see themselves as heroes who are willing to take a risk and to look at all the people in their community and understand that we have to avoid the seduction of the idea that we can only advance ourselves by leaving our poor brothers and sisters behind. We have to go forward as a community, as a nation, as a family. Well, it turns out that when you speak from your heart the way that I did that way, that the ripples extend outward and reach corners that you never expected. In this case, those ripples reached the American Independence Party of California and inspired in their new leadership the idea that they might want to participate in my campaign. Ironically, the American Independence Party was George Wallace's old party, but it's had its own rebirth even before I came along. It's been reborn as a party that represents not bigotry and hatred, but rather compassion and unity and idealism and common sense. When they learned about my candidacy, they had just drafted a new charter for their reborn party, where they could use their ballot line for good, for helping independent candidates to unite America without being blocked by the two-party duopoly. After hearing my interview, they began researching me and our effort, and they found out that we already had thousands of volunteers working across the country in various states, including California, to get me on the ballot. They were so impressed by this outpouring of democratic energy and vigor that they approached my campaign and offered us their spot on the California ballot. I see this story as a symbol of America's homecoming to an authentic populism of unity, peace, and prosperity. An evolution beyond the divisive years of President Trump and a return to the Kennedy vision, a country where government serves the people, where the people serve one another, and where our nation serves its idealistic mission as an exemplary nation, an example of democracy around the globe. That's why it's with a great sense of personal optimism that I proudly accept the American Independent Party's offer of ballot access here in California. Most of all, I want to extend my deepest gratitude to the tens of thousands of California volunteers who have worked for my campaign on the sidewalks, in the malls, at the ball games, in front of the grocery stores, to sign up California voters for the We the People Party to achieve the same end. It was the scale of your efforts and the depth of your commitment that inspired the AIB to come to me and offer me this easy way to get my name on the ballot for the President of the United States from California. You can all be proud that you've laid the foundation for a mighty organization that will support independent candidates for years into the future. I hope you'll all join with me in celebrating this victory, and I hope that, like me, you're going to wake up in the morning excited to enter a new phase of the California campaign. God bless you all.